The story continues with a scene from 3 years ago, before Korin Cox's regression. Here, we see the hero right after the defeat he suffered to the goddess Danua. From the look on his face, you can tell that he got a serious whooping, and so, with the tip of her spear right under his jaw, he quickly concedes the loss. Sure, he didn't really stand a chance against her, and she knows this, but she doesn't deny the fact that he's clearly practiced tirelessly. From their little duel, she could see that his fundamentals are solid, and as far as she's concerned, he has also focused on the 8 trigram spearmanship. It's truly impressive, so she wonders if there's a reason why he chose to do it. So, while still catching his breath, he confesses that it was the first thing that stood out to him in the martial arts section of the library. Upon hearing this, the goddess curiously asks why he chose the spear at the end, so he admits that it's because he heard it's easier to handle than the sword, to which simply agrees, adding that it's actually efficient. Clearly, the protagonist feels the same way, and suggests that he might as well learn her technique if he's going to learn spearmanship. Unfortunately, Danua doesn't agree with him on this one because she feels that he'll just end up getting consumed by it if he tries. As you'd expect, he's taken aback by this, but before he can get a word in, the goddess bluntly advises him to just stick with the 8 trigram spear for at least another 6 months. Apparently, even though she was pretty impressed with his display today, she still feels that he's not ready to learn her spear technique just yet. The 6-step spearmanship is the secret art of the final boss Baltazar. Korin Loch wanted to learn the 6-step spearmanship, and so Park Sai-Hu introduced him to that NPC. However, he quickly realized that there was much to learn. Even after over a month, Korin saw that there was barely any progress, and he envied Sihu because of it. All the guy had to do was open his skill window and he could cast great magic immediately with ease. Despite being very frustrated, our boy also knew that just being envious wouldn't get him anywhere. Korin locked in, no pun intended. And so, step by step, bit by bit, he trained harder and got better, determined to move forward every day. The hero eventually becomes so good with the spear that even the 7 forms become like the basics for him, and this allows him to get to the advanced 8 forms. And just like that, the rest was history. One night, all of his progress finally becomes truly evident after one of his training sessions. He finally did it, and the goddess confirms this after seeing how much he put himself through over the past 2 months to achieve success. Aaron takes his severely bruised hand and expresses how shocked she is by his progress. The goddess had thought 6 months would even be considered a short estimate for the time he used to achieve what he did, and this leaves her wondering why exactly Korin wants to get stronger. As far as she's concerned, if it was only about being stronger, then Saihu alone is more than strong enough. So, the MC reminds her that even a hero needs a companion, stating that someone has to drive the wagon next to the guy. More importantly, if Korin gets stronger, then fewer people will die, and he makes this clear to the goddess. His words catch Danua off guard and leaves her speechless for a second, before concluding that he truly is a good kid. Korin just gives her a warm smile in response before assuring her that he's really just an ordinary guy at the end of the day, to which the goddess agrees with him as she returns the smile. During the Mage Tower Rebellion incident, some of the mages of the tower sides with Firmak Daman. These mages shattered the shell of the goddess, Danua, who had disguised herself as Chairman Ario. Once the shell was gone, the goddess returned to the world in her original form, and according to this scenario, she died shortly after and left the players with her will to protect the world. And as a result, the hidden piece known as the Tribulation Treasure Vault was unlocked. That was the beginning of an event that no player was ever meant to stop. Or at least that's what everyone believed. But now, our hero felt otherwise. The hand he held was warm and the goddess' voice was so kind, and so, simply knowing that she would die inevitably, Korin could no longer even smile back at her. Aaron passed on everything including the 6-step spearmanship to her prized disciple, Tidez, but he had a different ambition, which was the coming of paradise. In other words, the end of the world. In the end, the goddess refused the final step of succession, and that turned out to be the greatest and most tragic failure of her life. Aaron admits how she hesitated and agonized over the decision. After all, she has experienced too many failures and hasn't always made the right choices. But now, in this moment, she's convinced that she's making the right call, and so, she officially asks Korin Loch if he will be willing to accept her as his master. Hearing this, our boy already knows that it's the line and event that every player of the heroic legend of Arhan knows. An event available only to players who have met a ton of conditions and accumulated good karma. And so, without any hesitation, our hero grabs the opportunity with both hands, accepting her as his master as he goes down on his knee. But by then, game knowledge didn't matter all that much anymore. The goddess embraces him in a tight hug as she gives him a few words of encouragement. She assures him that it's okay to fall asleep as long as he gets back up, and that it's okay to fail if he can just succeed the next time. Aaron says that it's okay to cry even as long as one smiles bigger afterward. She says all of this to him, urging him to just stick to his own justice. His own conviction tells him to always walk the righteous path. Korin listens carefully as she says these words, which leaves him in a daze for a while, and that's when she kisses him on the forehead and promises to give him the blessing of the goddess. Till this day, that memory lingers on in the hero's mind, and he vows to never forget the warmth of that moment when her lips touched his forehead. Meanwhile, in Nazria, the city of the dead, for 300 years, the same night of death repeated. Sadly, the immortal king's army was slowly getting stronger. The precarious balance that has lasted 300 years has finally reached its limit, which is why the goddess is currently being hunted down by the undead. Remember that battle from the last chapter? Well, it appears that Eren is about to lose. This is the third night of battle, and at this rate, she's afraid that Georg, the immortal king, will fully become a lich. Sadly, it's cutting close this time, and the goddess doesn't think she can stop him this time, but just as these thoughts run through her mind, a familiar voice cuts through the air, telling her not to worry as he states that Georg has already been taken care of, and this knight in shining armor turns out to be none other than Korin. He claims that they don't need to rush and assures Eren that they still have enough time. As you can imagine, the goddess is stunned by his appearance, and before she can even say anything, our boy simply informs her that he's come to save her. You see, when the normal King Georg dies, the city's time rewinds 3 days, and all the undead he created before vanish with it as if nothing ever happened. Nazria, the city in question, has a population of 1.2 million people living there, which is a lot, and this means that the entire continent would likely be wiped out if the undead escaped the city. And so, his master made a pact with the Reaper. The terms of this agreement ensured that it's a peaceful city by day, but at night it is ruled by the undead. And so, this continues as an endless cycle, but now, our hero must defeat the undead bosses and kill the Georg within 3 days. To do this, the goddess split her soul in two. This soul that remained here has repeated this 3-day loop and has even been forgotten by the real body's memory for the last 300 years. Everything was going fine for the city at least. For the last 3 centuries, and the pact remained functional, but eventually, Georg began to notice the loop the goddess had created to keep the peace, and now, this cycle has reached its limit. The soul she left behind can no longer maintain the loop, and it's only a matter of time before the forces of the immortal king take over the city for real. Because of this, Korin made a deal with the Reaper to purify Nazria within 6 months. And now, with that deadline approaching, they've looped 3 more times so that they could fight the undead by night and go on dates by day. Korin and Eren pretty much became a couple, spending every hour together, reading books, watching plays, and even visiting the circus from time to time. Unfortunately, their little holiday has come to an end and the final moment has come. So on the last day, the two have a little chat on the balcony as they reflect on the last couple months. Eren thanks Korin for coming to help her, admitting that she had fun, and he just simply wonders how she didn't just get tired of seeing the same thing for 300 years. In response, she explains that watching it alone and experiencing it with someone are 2 very different things. Korin admits that he's glad she had fun, but he still feels back that they'll never get to visit that amazing restaurant again. However, Eren doesn't think that they need a fancy place for it to be meaningful. As far as she's concerned, everything is enjoyable with her future disciple. The moment she says this, Korin looks her in the eyes, and before he even says anything, she already knows what he's thinking, so she states that tonight is the night they'll purify Nazria and end this eternal night. Our boy confirms this, claiming that it's possible based on his theory. Korin Loch had already tried it with Park Sai-Hu in the last round, so he's certain that it's going to work. But that's only if there are no unexpected interferences. With this in mind, he tells the goddess not to feel pressured, reminding her that this is his way of paying her back. All he asks of her is that she grant him a wish when this is all over. Eren isn't sure what he's talking about when he says this, so she expresses her confusion, but before she can figure it out, the scene changes once again. The regression had lasted for 300 years, and after countless deaths, Georg had finally found the answer. The immortal king finally understood the original runes and how to use them to create his unending paradise of the dead, and so, he decided that it was time to defile the original runes with his new knowledge. At the same time, Nazria's cycle had also come to an end, and the curse unleashed on the city was amplified severalfold. Georg had finally succeeded in his quest, and as such, he was transformed into a lich. In this new form, the immortal king is confident that he can destroy the goddess. He promises to ravage her corpse, destroy her body, and even defile her soul. The horrifying power of the lich leaves even the battle priest stationed in Nazria trembling. He looks out from his station to see the endless sea of undead concentrated in the monitored zone. They all converge in one place, which has never happened before, so he's immediately overwhelmed by the scenes before him. It turns out that the true immortal king is using his power to summon every undead in the city, and so, This leads to the beginning of the limitless wave, the beginning of the undead march. That night, the fierce battle ensues and our hero is pretty overwhelmed by it. They're under attack and Eren is becoming very worried because things aren't going the way they planned. Sure, anomalies are expected sometimes, but this is the first of its kind for Korin, so the goddess suggests that they hide first instead. The hero agrees with her, but before they can make the next move, another powerful doom bolt is unleashed on them. Korin manages to deflect it, but right after dealing with that attack, he sees that the entire city has been afflicted with corrosion contamination declaration, turning it into the land of the dead. With doom bolts raining from the sky and poison seeping deeper into the earth, Korin realizes that the wave of death is truly endless. As they attempt to evade the incoming attacks, Eren figures that Jororg must have already become a complete lich, and if that's the case, then the magic power in the city is nearly infinite by now. In other words, there's likely no safe spot to hide anymore, so she urges Korin to keep moving no matter what so he doesn't get consumed by the dark magic. As if the poison and doom bolts weren't hard enough to deal with already, undead hunters join the fray. These mid-rank undead creatures are unleashed on the duo, which just leaves them even more frustrated. Despite being exhausted and overwhelmed, our boy knows that he has to keep fighting, so he activates his 6th wave Sura the moment he spots the undead hunters. He tries to wipe out the undead monsters with this technique, but it turns out to be a lot more dangerous than he thinks. Eren sees it and immediately warns him not to use aerial movement against them, because stopping mid-air would be very bad for him. However, our boy refuses to back down, so he activates his rune of hardening along with the rune of wind, which allows him to keep moving in the air after destroying the undead hunters. Of course, the goddess is impressed by his skill and smiles, realizing how strong he actually is. On the other hand, Jororg is absolutely furious when he sees the human warrior making a fool of his forces. Enraged by how evasive the duo have been, the immortal king decides to go all out, so he unleashes 10 mighty strikes of the boom bolt and laughs maniacally afterward, thinking that the job is done. However, his excitement quickly turns to shock because his doom bolts suddenly start to disappear, leaving our favorite spear-wielding hero completely unscathed. Korin is sure that the immortal king must have forgotten what sunlight looks like after 300 years of endless nights, so he decides to remind the lich what light looks like. Jororg begins to panic when he sees the bright light coming from Korin's body, claiming that it's impossible, but as our boy's hair turns white once again, it's pretty clear that it is indeed possible. However, the immortal king just calls him ridiculous for thinking that he actually has the power of the sun. As far as this lich is concerned, there's no way a human can create that kind of power in a flash all on his own. And so, with this conviction, the King of Endless Night unleashes yet another doom bolt, but this time he throws everything he's got, reaching the maximum output. As the beam of death fires on, Jororg lets out another villainous laugh, teasing the hero for even thinking that he could stand a chance. And once the doom bolt is done, he unleashes his undead army yet again. Besides having undead hunters and warriors to fight for him, Jororg is also protected by the limitless magic of the moon. So, in his mind, there's really no way he can lose this fight. The killer zombies charge at the hero mindlessly, and of course, those that get too close are instantly sizzled away in a flash. As if that's not enough, the immortal king suddenly realizes that he's got another problem on his hands. Scattered all over the grounds in the city are runes of sun and flame all of a sudden, so the lich is pretty alarmed by this. He doesn't understand how the human managed to get a hold of so many runes in seconds, and while the undead king is still trying to wrap his head around it, our boy finally responds to him. Korin agrees with him on one thing, which is the fact that power like this can't just appear out of nowhere. And so, we're about to find out exactly why Korin is so overpowered all of a sudden. The last 10 days with the goddess was the only time he could finally act like a real disciple. Apparently, it was all thanks to her, the hero, who didn't mind being forgotten that the traces of battle were quietly built up over 300 years in solitude. Because it just so happens that throughout those countless battles, his master, Danua, inscribed runes all over the city. So now, Korin Loch takes advantage of all the runes, activating them till they shine brightly across the entire city. With each rune glowing, the darkness disappears, and once it's time, the hero uses the Solar Focus simple deployment spell to create a huge burst of energy. The ball of fire grows bigger and bigger with each passing second, and just before unleashing it, Korin admits that he's a bit sad that this is the last night. But he has a job to finish and a promise to keep, so he says goodbye to the immortal king for the last time as he activates the Solar Focus, incarnation of the sun, to finally end the endless night. Just like that, he watches as all the undead and the poisons melt away and burn up to purify the city of Nazria. This kind of power on dispatch right now is something that no priest or any other power could ever match, because this is a colossal scale cleansing as far as he's concerned. The massive burst of flames spreads through the entire city, and as the darkness is rapidly purified, the immortal king loses his shit. He refuses to believe his eyes, insisting that it is impossible for a mere human to possess such strength. Unfortunately for him, his opinion doesn't count anymore, because his reign of terror is finally over. Georg is instantly incinerated by the power of the sun for good, and the flames burn on violently. With this colossal scale cleansing underway, all 1.2 million deaths, 300 years of darkness, and all the shadows of the undead are swallowed by the sun. The solar focus brings the 300 years old night to an end, and the sun can finally shine on the city of Nazria again. The Reaper joins them to look down on the bright city and admits how impressed he is. Seeing that the human hero actually did it is truly incredible to him because he never imagined that the boy would be able to use Aaron Danua's treasure to achieve it. Hearing this, Corin explains that it's just a one-time miracle, admitting that not all of it was his own power after all. Either way, the Reaper informs him that he has fully upheld his contract, and so, he states that he will also keep his promise. For a while, the goddess trails off staring at the beautiful bright city, but then suddenly speaks again, expressing how surreal it is for her to see that the endless night is finally over. With a humbling look on her face, she turns to Corin and is about to talk about what would happen when this contract ends, but he already knows what she's about to say. After all, he's already been through this before, even in the future. Our boy knows what happens next. He knows that the goddess, who has guarded this land for 300 years, will disappear. To have achieved this, Aaron Danua knows that he must have worked hard, and he confirms that he did his best. So, she recalls their conversation before and asks him if he truly fell down a lot on his journey, which he confirms. She asks if he cried, and of course, he always did. Corin swore to never forget those words of encouragement she said to him, and in this moment, the memory flashes across his mind again. The hero vows once again to never forget her after she's gone. Even with different memories, the version of the goddess standing here comforts him with the same words as the one he met before. While holding him in her embrace, she vows to bless him with the goddess grace, just like before, and so it just made the moment so much more precious to him. The first time, Aaron kissed him on the forehead, but this moment is different as they lock lips. The goddess kisses him with tears running down her cheeks, and then she calls his name, sincerely hoping that he finds happiness in life. The two enjoy this wholesome moment together, knowing it would be their last, and so, just as the sun completed its role and night fell, Aaron was nowhere to be found. Corin stands on the balcony, recalling his last moments with the goddess as the rain pours down on him. She was finally gone, and the only one left was her old disciple who she had raised since childhood. The royal palace remained as it was as no other visitors came by afterward. After being betrayed by Baltazar, the disciple she had cherished as her successor, the queen was sealed away for over 80 years. And in that time, she was only woken up from the long sleep of silence and solitude by the sudden rush of memories from 3 centuries ago. 300 years ago, when she wandered the world, she met with the Reaper and asked him to make a contract with her. For some reason, she had forgotten Nazria, but she suddenly began to see the same flashes thousands of times to remind her of the endless battle with the Dark Mage who was also bound to the city. Aaron started to realize how boring it must have been for her other self to spend 300 years in the land of darkness. In one of the flashes, she saw Corin making a contract with the Reaper, which left her wondering if he betrayed Baltazar to seek her out. She wasn't sure what was true, but then the memory of Corin appearing in the dark city of Nazria to save her flashed as well. And as her doubts spiraled, her last memory was the moment when she blessed him with the goddess grace as she kissed the human hero. This rush left her flustered even in her dreams, and that's when she finally woke up. Just then, Josephine walks in talking about a new book she wants to read, but Aaron just screams about how she's losing her mind. It turns out that the memories that merged refused to vanish, and so, that moment with Corin had become etched in her mind. It was her very first kiss, and as such, an unforgettable memory for life. At the Grand Cathedral, in the Second Holy Land Zion, the battle priest who was stationed in Nazria returns to give his report. Estelle, the saintess, is taken aback by the news and finds it hard to believe that the entire city of Nazria was purified in a single night, when it was known to have over 1 million undead, but the priest insists that it's true, telling her that it was like the sun itself, and he's about to go on about how it's a blessing for humanity when she cuts him off. Estelle is the saintess who is said to possess the greatest power in history, and she's very intrigued by the news. You see, 4 years ago, she visited Nazria and managed to purify the city with ritual prayers, but it reverted to its dark state after only 3 days. For a long time, Nazria has been considered humanity's biggest headache, but it was a controlled problem. But now, the city has been cleansed in a single night, and nobody knows how. The fact that the wielder of this immense power remains unknown leaves the saintess very worried, and she fears that it might even be a greater terror. Knowing that someone out there possesses such power, is extremely disturbing for her, so she decides that she'll have to find out who purified the city of Nazria. The news of the colossal cleansing sent shockwaves through every force on the continent, from the Mage Tower and the Old Church, all the way to the frozen north. Everyone was on their toes concerning the mysterious power that purified the city of the undead after centuries. Meanwhile, in the Dingle Peninsula of the North Kingdom, there seems to be something brewing. In this world of deadly cold, crawling with monsters, the Northerners were always prepared for war, and as a result, this kingdom became known as one where only those with strength were revered. About 80 years ago, a warrior appeared here and quickly became the most suitable to stand at the top. This warrior was none other than Baltazar, who quickly made a name for himself and rose up the ranks in a place where the very quality he possessed was all that mattered: strength. Now, this powerful leader in the north has come to learn that the sun was stolen, and of course, the bearer of bad news is forced to suffer for it. Dunskes begs for mercy after his failure, but Baltazar gives the Beast King a lasting reminder to never mess up. The red-eyed master isn't pleased by the news, but he is curious to know who is responsible. So, with tears in his eyes, Skaze confesses that Corin Loch is the man they want. The Beast King is convinced that the hero was the one who killed Firmak because he claims to be Aaron Danua's first spear. Apparently, the hero's name rings a bell, and his advisor wonders if he knows the culprit, so Baltazar confirms that he's familiar, claiming that his rival changed from Parksio to Corin. The red-eyed master seems all chill at first, but suddenly bursts in rage that leaves his subjects overwhelmed by his power. Baltazar is infuriated that the hero has already appeared less than a year later, especially since he calls himself the first spear of his beloved master, the one he both loves and hates, Aaron Danua. For this hero to call himself the first spear of the goddess, the treacherous disciple decides that he truly needs to meet the young man named Corin Loch. Speaking of the young hero, while the North slowly gets ready to unleash war on him, he makes his way back to the academy, feeling excited to begin his second year. Back in the academy, we're taken over to the integrated dormitory, where some of the students live. The place was created to manage the special beings within the school. In other words, it's an isolated dorm built for Warren and Marie. Since there aren't many residents in this special facility, Professor Josephine acts as the dorm supervisor, and it's safe to say she probably needs a raise with all the crazy stuff she has to deal with all the time. Her glasses almost fall off her face when she bumps into Warren outside. She can't even begin to imagine what the red-eyed girl is up to, so she asks her to explain herself. At this point, we see Hua holding up a massive bluefin tuna fish, and in her defense she heard the eyeballs are good for EQ, which just leaves the professor speechless for a second. You'd think that's what she has to deal with at the moment, but then she takes another look and finally gets to see all the mischief the students in the integrated dorm are up to. Apparently, Corin and the girls are cooking up a huge seafood delicacy, and our boy is the mastermind. The overwhelmed professor is stunned at first, but quickly calls out to Corin, demanding an explanation immediately. Well, he's not really bothered about getting in too much trouble, since he's pretty much the assistant form supervisor. It turns out that this is actually much bigger than just a big meal for themselves, because Marie is literally supervising a group of guys setting up the place for the event. Anyway, Corin fills the professor in on what's going on, telling her how Marie says there will be lots of guests coming in, while the guys carrying in the massive furniture are struggling to avoid getting crushed. Our boy explains that Huaren bought the bluefin tuna at the market and that they decided to share it, but it looks like she doesn't have any plans to share the fish with anyone. As for Alicia, she came around to help too, and she's going all out with her cooking skills, even using the Arden-style, sashimi-style thin slicing on the tuna. After breaking it all down for the dorm supervisor, our boy gladly offers her a seat at the big table, promising to give her a nice treat for a good price. As flattering as it is, she isn't in the mood, so she simply tells them to just stop, quickly clean up, and then get to sorting out the rooms for those freshmen she told him about the last time. Sure, Corin doesn't mind sorting out the room and assures her that he can even do it for himself. Since the freshmen are siblings, he figures that they can probably share a room too, but Josephine insists on helping him out with it, especially since they actually need 2 rooms for the girls. More importantly, the new students will be starting at the academy the following day, so she informs him and asks him to help her show the girls around the next day. For some reason, the moment she says this, a really creepy smile appears on Corin's face as he takes a bite of his tuna. Clearly, he's not done with his mischief, because he has one more favor he needs her to grant before he agrees to help her out. So, the thing is, each year, the responsibility of guiding the freshmen falls to the outstanding second-year students of the academy. But now, Marie Donarev is in her third, so it falls to him to handle, because he just happens to be the person best suited to lead the freshmen. From the look of things, the MC takes this assignment very seriously. Man literally gets dressed up in a snazzy white suit for the tour and makes Warren hold up a banner congratulating the new students on their admissions. God only knows how he got her to play along with it. While she looks like she'd rather be anywhere else, the other students are blown away by how cool he looks in his new outfit. Well, the guys mostly though. Corin notices that the girls aren't really reacting, so he contemplates singing for them to charm them. All but before he can even develop the idea further, the red-eyed nun stops him. She's finally had enough, so before he can embarrass her some more, she whacks him in the head with the sign to knock some sense into him. That's pretty much where the tour ends, so he tells them to go in to meet the professors, encouraging them to their best. Clearly, Warren has been done with him for a while, so once the freshmen leave, she gives him back the sign. Corin is surprised that she's heading out so soon, so she simply informs him she's late for a meeting. Apparently, someone annoying said they'd come looking for her, so Corin curiously asks who she's talking about. Despite showing concern, she just remains vague about it and jets off, leaving him a little confused because they're not supposed to fly in the academy. Leading the freshmen around really makes it hit home for Corin. It's becoming really clear now that the new school year is starting soon, and while he's thinking about it, the new siblings Josephine talked about, Ren and Ron, call out to him, claiming that they're about to head in too. The two decide to move on, so Corin finally gets a good look at them for the first time. There are a few notable freshmen this year, of course, but from the look of things, these two are the ones drawing the most attention. Once again, his thoughts are suddenly interrupted when he hears a familiar voice leading some of the new students. It turns out to be Alicia, who seems to be in charge of the Westgate. She clearly looks pretty busy, but he figures he can just say hi, but that's when another character gets his attention. This posh-looking young lady in red introduces herself to him, revealing her name to be Miriam Elizabeth L. Rath. Of course, our boy is gobsmacked by her appearance. So now he's starting to rethink his earlier opinion about Ren and Ron being the most notable freshmen. Clearly, this red-haired stunner is something special. People might not recognize the face or her first name, but no one doesn't know the surname Elrath. Corin is familiar with this name all too well, so he immediately goes on his knee to greet her. The young lady standing before him is the second princess of this country, and the greatest villainess of heroic legends of Arhan. Yep, that's how big of a deal Miriam Elizabeth Elrath is. Seeing how polite he is, she commends him for his remarkable etiquette, and it makes her wonder if he learnt it somewhere. At this point, Corin admits that he learned from someone he knows. He thinks back to the moment when the lady in question taught him how to be a gentleman. She taught him to always kiss the hand of a beautiful lady and ask for a dance. But of course that's another story. It appears that these two have actually met before. They met in the previous timeline but not inside the academy. He's clearly still feeling a little awkward about it, since he's the only one who still remembers her. This version of Elizabeth doesn't know who he is, but she's still intrigued by him. In the current scenario, the princesses aren't even meant to be here yet, but for some reason, the two sisters have already appeared. While he's still trying to wrap his head around Miriam's presence, her sister Estelle Hadatha Elrath, who asks to shake hands with Corin. Since she's a princess, you'd think she'd expect him to go on one knee and kiss her hand like her sister, but she settles for a handshake instead. Corin takes her hand to greet her and admits what an honor it is for him to meet her. In response, she tells him that there's no need to be so formal, so they're schoolmates after all. Besides, she doesn't use honorifics with him either, so it's not like she's expecting it. Just then, the younger one, Estelle, looks over at her sister Miru and pretends like she didn't see her earlier because she's shorter. Clearly, she's the meaner one in the bunch, and so she's always teasing Miriam. On the other hand, the redhead obviously doesn't like her name being shortened. She scolds Estelle, but the older sister doesn't listen as usual. She's more concerned with telling Miriam to just call her Big Sis or Sanba. The pink-haired princess has been on leave for a little over 2 years, but as of today, she's officially back and she wants everyone to know it. Clearly, there's beef between the two sisters, and Miriam simply hits back at Estelle, reminding her that honorifics are for those who are superior to her. As far as she's concerned, the only thing Estelle has more of than her is that dumb lump of flesh. After biting back at her annoying older sister, Miriam tells Alicia that she's heading to the Liberty Hall now. She thanks the senior for escorting her to this far. At this point, Estelle also announced that she'll be taking her leave as well. She greets the other juniors, leaving the two in awe, especially Alicia. As for our boy Corin, he's convinced that he's already screwed. While he's busy thinking about how much trouble he's in for now that the princesses have arrived, we get to see what the other sisters are up to. Ren and Ron are currently taking a personal tour around the academy, and they're both trying their best to fit in and not embarrass themselves. The place is clearly mind-blowing for them because it's literally like a palace. They're still admiring the place when Miriam appears behind them. The redhead introduces herself to the twins, hoping to make some new friends. After all, they're in the same year, so she offers to shake hands with them. They're both reluctant, but Ron is the one who takes the bold step. She slowly stretches her hand out to the new girl, but then in the blink of an eye, Miriam grabs her wrist forcefully. The princess tightens her grip and starts talking about how they hunted down every one of their beaskin. It turns out that this redhead might even be more cruel than her big sister. She expresses how shocked she is to see that filthy strays like the twins are even still alive. With the little girl already in tears, Miriam then threatens to make a living specimen out of her if she touches her staff ever again. The princess shows just how mean she can be to the poor twins, leaving Ren to console her traumatized sister. It's as if Korin already knows that something bad is about to go down now that the Elrath sisters have arrived, because it suddenly feels like walking on thin ice. He seriously can't tell what might happen because the princesses are late-game characters who never even appeared in the academy before now. Unfortunately, now they have both appeared at the same time, and just thinking about the situation makes him wonder what butterfly flapped its wings this time around. The hero has a feeling that all this might be happening because of Nazria's purification. He's afraid that he drew attention way too soon, and now, new characters are popping up all over the place, characters that are likely going to cause problems for him. The situation bothers him so much that he has a hard time remaining focused in the first class of the semester. Life sucks for him right now, and he's so frustrated that the shitty butterfly just had to flap its wings one more time to cause a storm. Eventually, the professor notices that our boy isn't really paying attention, so he calls out to him. He quickly snaps out of it, and the professor scolds him for already losing focus on the first day. He apologizes for getting distracted, hoping to get off the hook, but the teacher doesn't let him off so easily. The man asks him to explain the concept of the magistrate, but our boy doesn't have an answer, and this just pisses the professor off even more. Apparently, the man didn't wake up happy this morning, so he takes it out on Korin by serving him a deduction on the first day. As if things were not already difficult enough for him, now he's got to deal with owing marks too. Usually, the first day is orientation, so everyone just wants to finish and go early. That's like the golden rule, so he's a little confused when he takes a look around and doesn't see most of the students. At the special dorm, Professor Josephine, him, Marie, Warren, and the Wolf siblings are expected to move in, but she said that they need 2 more rooms for the girls, so he ponders a little on how that would work. Just then, his thoughts are interrupted again because he suddenly stumbles into Miriam again, and this catches him off guard. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, she tells him to kiss him right there, but he quickly reminds her that a gentleman only kissed a lady's hand once per day. The princess finds his response quite amusing and wonders how a commoner like him can know noble etiquette. So, she decides to go straight to the point and asks for his support in the royal succession in the coming year. To this, Korin reminds her that he's just a lowly guardian and asks her if she really needs his support. A knight recognized by both the old church and the new, someone who possesses a holy relic, would be a different story. And that's when she reveals that he knows about Claw Solus, which catches him off guard. She's amused by his reaction because all of a sudden, he looks like he has a lot on his mind. Miriam gets a little too close for comfort and leaves our boy pretty rattled. Before he can even react, she wraps her arms around his neck and pulls him to herself. In the blink of an eye, they're both on the floor with Korin on top of her against his will. And then once she's got him in this vulnerable position, she asks him to tell her what he wants from this noble status that no one has even dared to touch. She promises to gladly indulge him in any pleasure he desires. Miriam tells him to ask for literally anything, and the look in her eyes leaves our boy absolutely speechless. We are finally back with new chapters for this series. But do not worry. More chapters are coming your way. That is it for this episode. Until next time.